Hello, Wyoming coaches. I wanted to put together a few short videos just with some tips and reminders for you guys for next week because I am getting quite a few questions in and looking at some legalities for you guys. So just wanted to go through some of the important things about game day and some of the most common legalities and things we've been seeing all year. So very first, when your team takes the floor, remember you don't set the floor up and then go off the floor, then come back on. So when your name is called, your team runs out on the floor and you put all your props down, all while there should be members of your team rallying and waving and jumping up and down and creating energy before you get started. If you have flags, the flags must be carried onto the floor. They can't be run on, say you've got 3 WHS flags or something. You can't run them onto the floor and then go back and get set. So the flags must be taken out to the floor, and then the flags can then be used once the band music has started. So again, they're part of the props in that we don't want you to start leaving the crowd before you're supposed to in that band section. While you're there, once you've all the signs and props are all set, that's when the coach is going to start the music. So we don't want your athletes to get into a set starting formation that gets ready to go. They should continue to rally and kick and jump and do whatever they want to, except for stunt, before the music starts. So you want to keep the energy going. Then once the music starts, then we get set, clap, start the dance portion. During that, before the music starts, remember that skills can happen. So you can tumble if you choose to during that section, but once that music starts, if a tumbling occurs once that music has started, that is a legality. So you just got to be very careful if you do. And then remember that if you do tumble or you jump or you kick or whatever you're doing before the music starts, that is still scored in your overall. That may not be a portion of the actual band chant, because if you tumble, that's obviously not scored there. But say we have bad form on our back handsprings, legs are wide, or someone messes up, that still counts in your overall score. So keep that in mind, that sometimes less is more. So starting with the band chant, just remember there are no stunts allowed during the band chant. There's no stunts and there's no tumbling. You can kick and jump because kicks and jumping are not considered skills. So remember that. No tumble, no stunts in the band chant portion. During this, it is so important that you use signs and you use palms, and then if you have flags, use them. But remember, they need to be used for you to help lead the crowd. So if I'm wanting the crowd to yell CHS, but my flags say green and white, I wouldn't want to use those flags because then I'm having the crowd yell green and white and they're supposed to be yelling CHS. So this band chant, remember the purpose of a band chant is not just to be appeasing to the eye, it's to get the crowd to yell something. So again, you've got to use signs, you've got to use palms if you have them. And if you have flags that correlate and make sense to what band chant you're doing, you must use them. Very, very important part. It's a crowd leading competition. So the purpose is to lead the crowd. The next is going to be the sideline, the situational sideline. Remember for this, it is either offense or defense. And the judges it has to be very clear for the judges to know that you are doing an offense or a defense sideline. So a general sideline for this would mean that you get 0 points. So if they give you your situation and you say CHS, let's go Bears, and that's your sideline, you are going to get 0 points because you're not answering the situational. So you need to make it so that it's either you're yelling offense in it or defense, or you're making very clear directions on what it's supposed to reference. It's very, very important. During this, you must do a stunt of some sort. There has to be an incorporation in this. If you do not stunt, you will get 0 points on that incorporation. So if you can only do shoulder sits, that is still considered a stunt. If you can only do thigh stands, do those because you have to incorporate during this section. Also, before you start the cheer section for this, you must bring those stunts all the way to the ground. And there must be a clear pause so we know that there's a difference in the sideline going into your cheer. Now, again, I don't mean for you to completely stop what you're doing and then get into a formation and then start your cheer. That's not correct. The sideline chant needs to stop. Your athletes should still be rallying and still yelling generic things that go into your cheer. Okay, further question on that, again, I'm going to give you guys my email address to talk or ask any questions, but that's a big one. Make sure there's a definite stop between the two, but that doesn't mean to stop rallying or in that. The stunts must come down. There must be a clear distinction between your cheer and your sideline. Moving into the cheer, remember there are rules for these as well. So the most common thing we see is people trying to do a full down. So you can spin, but you can never release a foot. So I can spin up and I can spin right back down, but I can never toss a stunt and release it with the spin to the ground. The fight song. The biggest thing for the fight song would be the incorporation. Now remember that the incorporation is not going to include jumps or kicks, which is different from the past. The incorporation is going to only start your 8 counts when the tumbling sits to go or the stunts jump from the ground to go. Okay, so again, if I'm stunting and I'm jumping in 5, 6, I grab arms on 7, 8, and I jump off the ground 1, 2, and 3. I'm starting on the 1. I'm not starting when you grab the shoulders. I'm starting when the top girl initiates to leave the ground to get into their stunts. And then we're going to start counting from there. So whether you start on a 5 or you start on a 7 or whatever you choose to start on, we're going 3 8 counts from that point. Another thing, if you're going to do, say your music stops and you're still up in the air and you've done your 3 8 counts, and then you're going to continue doing a spell out of some sort once the music stopped, we're still going to count those as extra 8 counts if your cheerleaders are up in the air yelling more words. So the only way you can stop in the air at the end of your 3 8 counts is if that is it, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. And then we come down and rally. But if you end 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, and we do a spell out, B, E, A, R, S, we're still going to continue to count those 8 counts. So if you choose to do that, make sure you allow the appropriate amount of 8 counts. And then we're going to continue to count with the rhythm that we've been counting through the music portion. So keep that in mind. Just some big overall recommendations for the game day. Use the floor across the mats and not deep. So again, you want to use all 9 panels, which means that if you can put 8 girls on lines and you can put 9 girls in the middle of a panel, and they should all be used that way. And even then, you don't want a big distance between the lines because then you're just getting further away from your crowd rather than spread out. Even if you have a team of 5 athletes, you can use all 9 panels with 5 athletes. Now, do you have to use them the entire time? Absolutely not, if you're a very small team. But if you're a large team with a lot of athletes, remember the partner stunt should be spaced out, clearing the floor. If you only have 2 stunts, you don't want them on the 2 middle panels or the 2 panels out. Spread them out so they have coverage equally on both sides. I got a lot of questions about mascots in these game day routines. And think of it 2 ways, because I've seen a few examples and then it kind of makes me rethink of how I look at this. If you're using your mascot to just be an extra that's in the back, that runs around with a noise sign or is like clapping or is just being an extra, then we're not going to count that mascot into your numbers, if that makes sense. Now, if your mascot is in the routine doing the dances, if they're using signs and their object is they're the H of your WHS sign, then that mascot is going to count as your numbers because you're utilizing your mascot as an athlete on that team, which now that mascot is giving that team a different visual look because that mascot is doing the dance. So he's part of ripples. Whereas in most scenarios, mascots are usually kind of in the back honestly usually being distracting, and that's not what we're looking for. So there's two different versions of when a mascot would count in your numbers and when they would not. And if you've got any questions, you can send me a video and I'll let you know. And then just the last thing on this is remember that this game day score sheet is really focused on motion technique and sharpness. It's focused on ripples and how you lead the crowd. There is no difficulty focus on there. So you have 1 week to work on those motions, work on that motion placement, work on how sharp these athletes can be. Because again, that is the majority of that game day score sheet. Again, if you guys got questions, I'm happy to review your videos. We're running out of time. And again, after Monday, I don't know how many I'll be able to get to. So if you've got videos, please send them before this weekend. My email is jmccuRdy@varsity.com. That's jmccurdy@varsity.com. And again, I'm happy to watch any of them to look at if you've got questions on if you're in your 3/8 counts. This is not for me to critique your routines, for me to give you ideas. I'm just going to let you know what legalities, if any, to make sure you're following in there so you don't have to worry when you get to state.